Great, sounds good. So like Rachel said, my name is also Rachel. I'm Rachel Fox. I'm a transition advisor with the State of Connecticut Department of Developmental Services. I'm just going to go ahead and share my screen, so just give me 1 second. It should be good. So my role within the department is to work with school-aged youth and their families. Usually we focus on ages 18 to 22, but we are shifting our focus to some younger students as well, and even before then. And we talk a lot about adult services and what that looks like, and I help you access those services. Feel free to ask me questions, stop me whenever. I think we're going to we're going to record and then you can ask me questions, but if you want to throw them in the chat so you don't forget them, totally cool. So let me go ahead and get started. Or not, because it's decided. There it goes. So this is just our DDS mission. We, as a state agency, are responsible for planning, development, and administration of integrated services for folks with an intellectual disability or those diagnosed with Prader-Willi syndrome. That is the population that we focus on. There's specific criteria to be eligible to receive services from us. So that's something to keep in mind. But our goal is to make sure that all of these folks have the life that they want. They're able to fully participate in their communities to their greatest extent, that they live good and meaningful lives, whatever that means for them. This is just kind of our vision statement. It kind of encapsulates the mission statement as well. We really focus on helping individuals make informed choices, promoting lifelong opportunities. We advocate for individuals quite often, and we'd like to help families find resources to help advocate if there's an issue. And we want to make sure that our individuals feel safe, that they feel empowered, and that they are members of their community like you and me, right? So to become eligible for DDS, you do have to meet a certain criteria, like I said. You must be a resident of the state of Connecticut, and you have to meet what's called our statutory definition of an intellectual disability. And what that means, that a person, you will usually have an IQ test of below 69. Sometimes, in some cases, if you have an IQ level that's above a 69, like it's a 70, 71, we might still consider you eligible depending on adaptive and cognitive functioning and what that looks like with test results. Or you will have that medical diagnosis of Prader-Willi. And the big piece is that this disability needs to originate during what's called the developmental period, so before age 18. After age 18, it's a little harder for us to get you involved. And we do encourage families to apply for DDS services as soon as possible. We do see that in a lot of communities. Folks will wait until age 18 to apply, and you don't have to do that. You can apply as soon as you know. We have a children's division. We offer birth to 3 services. And before you're eligible for all of these adult services, we do have other opportunities and supports and things like that you can potentially access, right? So that's eligibility. Let me tell you a little bit about the application process. Like I said, you can apply to DDS as soon as possible. Don't wait. The sooner you're involved with us, the sooner we get involved, the sooner you can get some help. The application is on our website, but I did share some hard copies of the application with Rachel at the library, so she can help you access them that way too. In this presentation, this is just a link. It doesn't really help you, sorry. But in addition to all of the signed clinical evaluations, right, we do need to see all of that testing. Usually it's done by the school. We have to make sure that the application is signed. There's a HIPAA form in there. We'll need a copy of the applicant's birth certificate, medical insurance, and social security card. We look for the last medical examination, so last physical, maybe the most recent one, and the last 3 IEPs from school, and the most recent triennial, right? And then last but not least, if you have guardianship or conservatorship, we do ask for that as well, but that's not applicable to every case. And if you don't have them, it's okay. Those are the documents you need. On the application itself, it does give you a checklist, which is really helpful. So if you are seeing this list and you're thinking, oh no, that's a lot of papers, I'm never going to remember, it's on the application. Don't worry. Once you apply, it usually takes about 2 to 3 months to receive a determination of either approval or denial. That eligibility letter should arrive by mail. However, if you provide an email address on your application, it will go to your email. So just make sure that you're checking junk folders, spam folders, and things like that. DDS does prefer that you submit online through your email or you include your email address. Things seem to process a little bit faster that way, but you are more than welcome to apply by mail if that's easier for you. After you are found eligible, you'll be put on a list with our helpline case managers, who I'll talk about in a little bit, and we'll do an introduction to DDS. So we'll talk a little bit more about what services and support you're now eligible for. You'll be part of our individual and family support division. It's a really long name that just means you're on the helpline and you can call us anytime. If eligibility is denied after this process, you can appeal within 60 days of the letter. If you wait after 60 days of receiving that letter, you will need to go through the application process again. So something to keep in mind. In that letter, it'll give you more details on how to appeal the decision if you don't agree with it, and what next steps that you can take. And then I do have to give you our little disclaimer. DDS services are voluntary. So our services are not entitlements, they're not mandated, and they are sometimes up for appropriations through the state legislature. And I do have to give that as a little disclaimer. To contact the eligibility unit, here is their phone, fax number, and email address. This is also featured on the actual application itself. And DDS.eligibility, that email address is the best way to contact them. You're welcome to call, you're welcome to fax. Email is the best way. And you can even submit your application and all of those additional materials through email, which is really nice, because then if you're waiting for someone to get back to you, you can reach out a second time and say, I sent this application on June 10th at 11 a.m. and I have not received an answer, and now it's September. And they can go back and find that original email. So it is nice to have that receipt. Comes in handy. If you have a primary diagnosis of autism spectrum disorder and you're not meeting that criteria as having an intellectual disability with an IQ of under 69 or lower, you'll be put on what's called the Autism Spectrum Disorders Waiver, and that is operated through DSS. So the nice thing about these two different kind of systems is that it's one application. So we will review the application, and if we determine, you're not part of DDS, but there's still something going on, we see the autism diagnosis, we'll send you to DSS. Don't know what my camera just did there. We're going to keep going. This waiver program has their own type of eligibility determination. So you'll get transferred there. You'll have to have that diagnosis of autism before age 22, so they're a little bit more lenient with that timeline. And the person must have substantial limitations in at least 2 or more of the following life activities, and I'll just list them for you really quickly. And those life activities are things like self-care, understanding and use of language, learning, mobility, self-direction, or just capacity for independent learning. The contact information for the Autism Spectrum Disorder Waiver is Nate Calixto. He's the resource specialist there. He is similar to my role, but the DSS Autism Waiver version. So he has all types of resources. He can point you in the direction of services. He'll sometimes interface with individuals who may have started out on the autism waiver and move to the DDS waiver and things like that. He's very responsive. Feel free to give him a call. Little disclaimer, there is a wait list for services under this program. It is quite long. Apply early. So once you're found eligible for DDS services, you're considered a part of the IFS division, which means you are eligible for help through our helpline. There are 3 different helplines in the DDS in our state. There's 3 different regions. There's 3 different helplines. We are the North region. And services and supports are inclusive with this list here. So there's respite, which is huge. A lot of our school age families access those respite grants. We also have respite centers, which are really nice. You can visit them quarterly. It's for a full weekend. You can test out the center beforehand to make sure that it's a good fit, so that you can get a break, your child can get a break, and everybody keeps moving. We do ask that you schedule those in advance. Last minute does not really work through that system. You're also eligible for a pass to Camp Harkness, which is part of Harkness Memorial Park down in Waterford. If you've never been there, it's absolutely beautiful. Even for just like a day trip to a random state park, there's beach, there's a mansion you can walk through and around, really lovely. We also offer family grants, which is another really popular service and support. And these can help cover the cost of disability-related expenses that insurance or schools may not be covering. You can also access these grants for respite or other assistive technology and things like that. We see a lot of grants go out around this time of year for summer camp. So that's something to consider. During the school year, we might see a lot of grants for after-school activities like therapeutic horseback riding or something along those lines. We also have our family support workers who can come out to provide some short-term help. We'll use family support workers a lot to help with entitlements, maybe community engagement, getting from home to unified sports practice back home. They might help individuals go out into the community, take them on a walk now and then. So our family support workers are there for that. Then you have transition advisors, which is me. Like I said at the beginning, we work primarily with individuals aged 18 to 22, but we will sometimes work with individuals 16 and up. Some of that is changing a little bit. The goal is to start connecting with families when children are a lot younger. We've just hired a few more transition advisors. There used to be only 3 in the region, and now there are 6. So we step in to help with resources and potentially refer you to the helpline if needed. We also have a group of clinical consultations that we can offer, which would be things like short-term speech and language, occupational therapists, physical therapists, behaviorists, psychologists, and nurses, and the like. And those are for short-term consults. Maybe there are some behaviors in the home that are not ideal, that are potentially putting people, that safety is potentially an issue. We can send somebody out, they can take a look and make that recommendation, right? So we have all of these different services once you're on the helpline, before you transition to adult services, and as soon as you're eligible for DDS services, these are there for you. Okay. Keep going here. Like I said, there are 3 different regional helplines. Bloomfield is in the North region, so that phone number is right at the top along with the email address. One of the resources that I did share with Rachel is our helpline brochure. It'll go into a little bit more detail than I am regarding the types of services and supports that we have. And the contact information is also on that brochure as well. Okay, now this is where really my focus is. So beginning at age 18, most individuals with an intellectual disability will be put into a transition program. I have words, I promise. And during their transition years, right, 18 to 22, we recommend that you complete the following tasks. So these tasks might include connecting with your transition advisor, exploring decision-making options through the probate court, applying for Social Security income, applying for Medicaid, connecting with BRS through Level Up or adult vocational rehabilitation, getting a photo ID, and registering to vote. I'm going to go a little bit into detail with all of these different steps. And I did share the timeline that's mentioned here on the slide with Rachel as well. We have it in English and in Spanish, and you can access that timeline through the DDS website too. So my role, like I said, this does a really nice job of explaining it a bit better. I assist families and schools and students to plan a student's transition from school services to adult services, whatever those adult services are going to look like. So that might be figuring out if employment is a good fit, what type of employment might be a good fit, what services and natural supports we might need on the job to be successful, and so on. I also connect with other state agencies like DSS to ensure that we're exploring all of the different options available to individuals. My main focus is being a resource for you. So if you have an individual that's really interested in an individual really focused on like early childhood right now, and she's looking for a certificate program, I'm on the case, right? Let's see what we can find. What can we look into? How can we get you there? We also collaborate with the providers of adult services. So our state agencies, not state agencies, our qualified provider agencies and things like that to ensure that students and families, as well as schools, are really knowledgeable of all of the different employment and day options that are available. There is a bit of a misconception surrounding guardianship, conservatorship, and decision-making. In a lot of presentations, I get a bunch of questions about guardianship. Guardianship is not a requirement for individuals to be part of our organization. We have lots and lots of individuals who are their own decision makers, who might ask for help here and there like you and I, but they are their own decision makers. But sometimes that's not the case. So we do help families navigate guardianship and conservatorship. Guardianship, you can petition your local probate court about 6 months before your 18th birthday. So around age 17 and a half, begin to have that conversation. There are some fees, but usually they can be waived depending on income and depending on the court. Once you petition the court for guardianship, there's a specific form you fill out and drop off. That'll initiate a process that culminates in an actual court hearing. Guardianship is something that's not really taken lightly. Your child will have their own legal representation. It's quite a process. There are two different types of guardianship. There's limited and plenary guardianship. Limited guardianship just means that you might be the guardian of certain aspects of an individual while the individual maintains some decision-making power over other aspects. Plenary is that full guardianship where you're making all decisions, you're responsible for all decisions, right? It's you. This process from the time you petition to that court hearing is only 45 days, and that is a strict limit. Guardianship is then reviewed every 3 years and can be terminated. So it is temporary. It doesn't have to be. You can continue to renew guardianship if it's a system that's working, but if it's not working, let's say the individual builds up their skills throughout the transition years and even beyond, and they're ready to be more independent, that's something that can be reviewed at that 3-year mark. With guardianship, if the protected person's assets don't exceed $10,000, the guardian can petition the probate court for control of that person's income and assets as well. And that does come in handy a little bit, especially at the beginning of the transition process, 18 to 22. We have a lot of guardians who are also guardians of their individuals, their child's assets. And they'll become rep payees for Social Security income and things like that to help manage that money. You can also petition for conservatorship, which is like guardianship light. The petition process is similar. You fill out a form and you can drop that off at the probate court up to 45 days before the 18th birthday. So that timeline is a little different. There are two different types of conservatorship: conservator of person and conservator of estate. Conservator of person is similar to a guardianship, but you don't have as much control over the other person's decision making, where conservator of estate is specifically for money. So if you have an individual who has more than $10,000 in assets, but they really can't manage it, they truly don't know how, they really need a lot of help, conservator of estate is definitely an option. And conservatorships may be involuntary or voluntary depending on the situation. I can always send you more information about that if you reach out to us. And there are other options to consider regarding supported decision making, and we're seeing a lot of popularity with these other options. There are natural supports, such as reaching out to family and friends for advice. There's power of attorney, which can be enacted to help with medical decisions or situations where the individual really needs help, but maybe they don't need so much help as guardianship. There are advanced directives and supported decision making, which is similar to those natural supports. You'll just have them written down and it's all set up. You can check out Disability Rights CT. All of my resources are at the end of the slide for more information about decision-making options. And when you reach out to your transition advisor, we can send you that information as well. Once the individual turns 18, they can apply for Social Security income. This is income from the Social Security Administration that's meant to help aged, blind, and disabled folks who have little or no income. And this is cash to meet basic needs for food, clothing, and shelter, right? You can apply online at ssa.gov, or you can call the 800 number listed here. And we encourage individuals to apply for Social Security income for 2 reasons. I'm getting ahead of myself. First, it's nice to have that extra income, especially when you first turn 18. You may be struggling to find a job. You're maybe working in your transition program, right? Get you set up, right? Will help cover food, shelter, expenses, things like that. It's also very helpful when applying for Medicaid. And I'll explain that when we get to the Medicaid slide. After age 18, so once the individual turns 18, family income and assets should not be documented. The individual is now their own household in a family of 1. And that's something really important. Some of our parents sometimes forget that. The individual is technically their own household now, so only their assets should be counted. Eligibility benefits and amounts are redetermined every 1 to 6 years. Social Security will reach out to you. They really handle all of that on their own. We do see that it takes quite a while to become eligible for Social Security. The SSA takes about 6 months to review and process your application to even tell you if you're missing a document. So the earlier you apply for SSI, the better. There is that not a tight turnaround. Once you apply for Social Security income, you're all set to apply for Medicaid. And the reason that applying for Social Security makes the Medicaid process easier, because Social Security will tell the federal government, hey, this individual is disabled. So that when DSS goes and they review your Medicaid application, they'll say, oh, yes, the federal government knows that you're disabled. Now we know that you're disabled, and they'll put you on the right kind of Husky. Medicaid, Husky, is the state health insurance program, and it's for individuals with disabilities, folks who are elderly, or folks who have low income, right? There are 4 different types of Husky. There's Husky A for children. There's Husky B, which is the CHIP program. There's Husky D, which is for any low-income adult over the age of 18. And then there's Husky C, which is special. It's for any low-income adult who's also aged, blind, or disabled. And that's the special one, right? We want you to get Husky C. So when the individual turns 18 years of age, they're able to apply for Connecticut Medicaid, again, under their own household. I already said the process will go a little bit smoother. And again, you're applying for the individual only. So income from other family members doesn't need to be included. Right? They're on their own. One very important feature of Medicaid is that an individual's assets can't exceed $1,600 a month unless they're working. Husky C does have a special track. We call it the working track, or MedConnect, where an individual with a disability can be working and can make about $75K a year and still receive Husky C benefits, which is really incredible. Students and young adults can remain on their parents' or private insurance as primary and carry Husky C as a secondary or supplemental, so they don't have to forego any private insurance. Once you apply, you can check your application status using that number there. Call earlier in the morning rather than later to avoid some of those really long wait times. And this is what's really important about Husky C. And if you take nothing else away from this presentation, here's the big one. Husky C is how you get access to adult services through case management. That's really the next step. So any of these day programs that I'll speak about, employment programs, even some programs through BRS like Connecticut Pi, which is a new feature, you'll need that Husky C Medicaid. And DSS does require an annual redetermination to maintain that eligibility for Husky C. If SSI doesn't work out, let's say, so we see this quite often, where an individual is not necessarily eligible for SSI for whatever reason, that doesn't mean that Husky C is unattainable. DSS has a different process that we can use, so have no fear, just wanted to make sure we cleared that up. The next little bit of this presentation is more about the Bureau of Rehabilitation Services, which is part of the Aging and Disability Services Agency. Their sister agency is BESB, which is the Bureau of Education Services for the Blind. And BRS, like I said, Bureau of Rehabilitation Services, helps individuals with significant disabilities obtain, maintain, and advance competitive integrated employment. And competitive integrated employment just means working with peers at or above minimum wage. That could be part-time, full-time, with natural supports or without. Right? And that's their goal. So individuals who are interested in employment or still sort of making this decision and not really sure what comes next are encouraged to contact BRS within the year that they're exiting special education. They'll send out a letter, usually the January, it's like 18 months before the actual exit from school, they'll start sending out those letters. So you should receive something in the mail. And in the North region, our contact for BRS is Rachel McCann. Her contact information is on the slide. She's really great. She'll help you figure out which path is the right one for you regarding employment and BRS. Level Up is one service through BRS that really starts in school, and it'll start around age 16. This is a pre-employment transition service to students who, while they are, and it's provided to students while they're in their secondary program. So BRS collaborates with local education authorities, aka your school district, to provide or arrange for this service for all students with a disability aged 16 to 22. And these employment services include things like job exploration, work-based learning experiences, counseling on like trainings and different interests, workplace readiness training, and self-advocacy. And that will happen through your school. So Level Up will reach out through the school will let Level Up know, and then Level Up will reach out to you. And that is BRS and their program there. BRS does have this new program. It's called Connecticut Pi, or Pathways to Integrated Employment. They were awarded a very fancy grant 2 years ago, excuse me. And the purpose of the project is to increase opportunities for the participants in the program to obtain that competitive integrated employment. They're targeting through this program students and youth with disabilities who are contemplating sub-minimum wage. That's something that's offered by some of our agencies, but really not many anymore. Or individuals with disabilities who are employed and already earning sub-minimum wage. They're really focusing on the young adult population, so that age 18 to 22. And CT Pi is nice because it does offer some more comprehensive services. So they'll offer things like benefits counseling, peer-to-peer support, time with a self-advocate, and things like that that traditional BRS may not offer. Some additional tasks on the transition plan to consider: applying for a state ID. These are issued by the Department of Motor Vehicles, everyone's favorite place. You do have to be a Connecticut resident to get that state ID. You can apply at any DMV, and I actually think you can apply online now, which is super cool. You'll need to have on hand your birth certificate, social security card, and 2 pieces of mail. There are some other documents listed on the DMV website if mail or one of those options is not available. And the link here is you can just Google CT DMV non-driver ID, and it should bring you to the right spot. As part of the Husky C application, we actually include the application to vote and to register to vote. So 2 birds, 1 stone. That's managed through the Office of the Secretary of the State. To register to vote, you just need to be 18, a U.S. citizen, and a resident of the town you're planning to register in. There is no charge. You can register online if you're not going through the Husky C process just yet. You can go through your local town hall. There are voter drives usually around election season. Or like I said, when you apply to Connecticut Medicaid, the form is right there at the end. I think it's probably the easiest way to check that off your list. So this is where we start talking a little bit about employment and day services. As a reminder, these services are only available once you've gotten Husky C, right? So sometimes we find that folks kind of get stuck in all of that pre-stuff, and that's okay. We can still chat about these things. But that is a precursor and a prerequisite. DDS is an employment first agency, which means that we believe everyone can work and that there is a job for anyone who is interested. So our main focus is helping folks connect with their community in this way. However, we do understand that there are some individuals who really aren't there yet, who are medically complex, and who have different types of needs. So I like to say that our goal is to find the best program, right? Whether that's employment or a more leisure-focused program. So the types of support services we have are here. We've got employment services, pre-employment services, day services. We offer some help with transportation, but mostly it's just navigating other forms of transportation that already exist. And we have our qualified providers or our agencies that help offer these programs. All of these services are portable, which means that if you really don't like the type of program at one agency, but you're really interested in the program at another agency, all of the funding for that program goes with you. So you can take your funding and move to a new agency without a problem. This also means that if you're working with an agency and agency help just really isn't working out, you want to go do your own thing, maybe you're starting your own business or your needs are just a little more individual, you can take that money that would be traditionally used for an employment service and move it into what's called self-direction, which I'll talk about in a second, and direct your own services from there. So there's lots of different options. Our main support services are kind of broken into a few different boxes, kind of like I was saying. Our employment services are competitive integrated employment, which, like I said, is working part-time or full-time at a minimum wage or better. Individual supported employment, where you might meet with a job coach every now and then to help get you situated, to check in, make sure things are going well. Customized employment, which is where the agency will actually work to find you a job that works for you with an employer in the area. This is a newer service. It's not as popular. It is a little bit complicated and usually not used as a first choice. Usually we come to it after a few tries with some other programs. We also have group supported employment, which is the more traditional job coach, 2 to 3 people working with that job coach on a day-to-day basis. So these are offered through our agencies, right? We also have pre-employment services. First is employment transition services, or ETS. This program is designed to last no more than 3 years, and it mirrors the type of transition program you would see in a school setting. We have a lot of individuals who are doing really well in their transition program, but they're not necessarily ready for employment yet. They have a lot more learning to do. ETS is a perfect choice. We also have Project Search, which is really interesting. It's a 9-month internship program. Many of our agents will partner with large institutions like hospitals to help set this type of program up. And through that internship program, individuals will work in 3 different roles during the day, usually 3 months at a time. In the morning, they might be working in that role, practicing their skills, things like that. And then in the afternoon, they'll break for actual classes, which might help with work-related tasks, filling out a timesheet, and things like that. Project Search is really cool. Only problem with Project Search, it is not paid for those 9 months, but a lot of our individuals will come out of Project Search with a job. For individuals who are not really looking for employment, who are maybe more interested in day services or might need a day service, we do have our traditional group day options, which is a DSO. And that's usually through a traditional agency. At a DSO, there might be time for some music-based therapy. They'll practice some activities of daily living. And things like that. It's a lot more low key and, again, a lot more leisure focused than any of these employment programs. We also have called our individualized day supports, and that can be vocational or non-vocational. And that's where you'll actually partner with an agency. Someone from that agency will come to your home, and you can work with that person on specific employment goals or specific day and leisure focused goals. Maybe that's community engagement. We've seen folks working with IDV, that vocational program, who own their own business and they just need some help managing that. Really, the possibilities are endless. We also offer senior supports and some, like I said, some basic transportation. A lot of our transportation services are more focused on, let's get you connected to the ones that already exist in your area, like ADA, paratransit, and things like that. Our qualified providers are our agencies. So that's who you might be working with when you join like a group supported employment or something like that. We call them qualified providers because sometimes calling multiple things agencies gets people confused, like I do. There are lots of different service delivery options within the different service delivery types. So you can either work with a traditional provider agency to manage that program. The agency at that point would assume full responsibility for hiring, supervising, and managing employees. You can always check out our qualified provider list online. You may work with an agency but have a lot more choice. This is a nice middle ground, where the individual might share some responsibility with an agency for hiring and managing employees. This is a nice middle ground. Maybe you're doing something a little different, or you have needs that are a little complex. This might be a good option. We also have self-direction, which is where the primary role in designing, selecting, directing, and evaluating supports falls on the individual and their guardians. And this is a really great option for individuals who are looking for something non-traditional, who maybe have non-traditional needs or non-traditional desires. There's lots of information about self-direction on our website. If this sounds like you, I would definitely encourage you to check it out. It's a really, really interesting way to think about support. Once you're all set with Husky C, you'll be assigned to what's called a case manager. And the traditional case manager model kind of looks like this. You'll be transferred to that case manager. And with your case manager, you'll complete what's called the level of need assessment. And that assessment you can take a look at online. But this is an evaluation that will assess specific needs, such as medical needs, psychiatric needs, behavioral needs, and things like that. Through that process, you'll be given a number, 1 to 8, and that will help determine funding needs. This LON is updated every year. So if something changes, right, it's updated. And from that LON, from the introductory meeting, your case manager will come up with what's called an individual plan. And that's really similar to an IEP you might get at school, but instead of being focused on school objectives, it's more focused on life objectives. You know, what do you want? What do we need to get you there? What kinds of services are going to make you successful? Is there anything we need to take into account if you're working with an agency, feeding, things like that? And then last but not least, you'll be all set up with our waiver services so that we can provide you all of these really lovely resources and things like that. Throughout the planning process, we focus on what's called life course planning. And the core belief there is that all people have the right to love, work, play, and pursue their life aspirations. We do try to keep all of our planning person-centered, and you can check out our life course resources online on our DDS website. These tools provide an opportunity for the individual to really express their vision for the future. At DDS, we really do try to put the individual first as much as possible. We also have our DDS advocates. They're self-advocates, so they are individuals with intellectual disabilities who work for DDS to help us plan programs and make sure that we're on the right track as an agency. They'll often do programs and things like that. They have a really great healthy relationships program that they do, I think once a year, usually in the spring. That's very popular. And altogether, they're just great. Here are some links and resources for you. If you are having trouble contacting any of these folks, you can always reach out to me. I can put you in touch with them and help you figure out what's next. Some additional resources. The only one I really want to make sure I point out here is the second one down, Parent Advocacy Center, or CPAC. That is a huge, huge place that we direct a lot of individuals to, especially if you're having some trouble at those special education planning and placement team meetings. Something is going a little wrong and you need some help. The Parent Advocacy Center is there for you. They're great. They are very knowledgeable, and they'll help you advocate for you and your individual. Last but not least, my contact information is in the middle here. I'm currently the transition advisor for Bloomfield. Email is the best way to reach me. And that's that. I hope to hear from you folks soon. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Rachel. This is going to be really, really helpful, I think, to a lot of people. So we really appreciate your taking the time.
Of course.